All right. Welcome to today's live stream. I appreciate you checking it out. I'm going to be sharing and talking briefly about two documentaries. One, sharing my notes. I don't have the other documentary notes in front of me about Israel. Doing deep dives into documentaries, videos, interviews, watching a lot of Gabby Martin stuff, or Abby Martin, excuse me, at Fab Abs on Instagram. And who else am I diving into? Lots of good stuff out there, lots of stuff that I didn't know, making myself aware of what's happening in the world. Blowing my mind, to be quite honest. Blowing my mind. The two documentaries I want to talk about today, and I will also be doing reviews in the review series of both of these. I'm a little bit backlogged at the moment, but I wanted to share just kind of do a deep dive into some of the things that are on my mind about these documentaries. The first documentary I want to talk about is called Tantura, Tantura. You can find it on YouTube. It was absolutely phenomenal. Both of them are phenomenal. The second documentary that I'll share with you some ideas about is called The Occupation of the American Mind, and that is also on YouTube. That is about Israel's propaganda machine. It is wild, wild. This is coming about because, as you know, you may or may not know that I published the guide, the Great Awakening Guide, about all the resources and books and information that I think all human beings need to know about what's happening in the world. You can find it at greatawakeningguide.com. With live links, with also like 41 or 31 things you can do to keep yourself as safe as possible in the world. In the world, I know events are unfolding at a unprecedented way, but I find it to be, the more knowledge we have, the better, my friends. Thank you for the thumbs up. I appreciate you. So again, Great Awakening Guide. Version 3 is out. The fourth version will have all of these documentaries with links, etc., to them. And so let's jump in briefly to some of my high-level notes about Tantura. I'll also be sharing clips on my social media at gmarkphillips, short clips, 60-second clips. I'll put them on YouTube here as well. From the documentaries, I've got 4 plus a quote here. Let me just go over my high-level notes. It's about this gentleman named Teddy Katz. And he is a Jewish Israeli person. He made this documentary, or was involved in making this documentary. It was made by Jewish people, made in Israel. I'd never heard anything about it in school, not a peep. I'd never heard about Tantura. I didn't even know really about the 1948 creation of the Israeli state. Never knew about it, right? Maybe that's on me, but I'd never heard about it. In the documentary, one thing that struck me was this quote, that you take a state by force. And that is, what Israelis did, and actually pre-Israelis, right? The military forces that went in to secure the Palestinian land and drive the Palestinians from the land so they could secure it for Israeli settlers. And, I'm not knocking that, because that's how human beings are. That's what Americans did to the Native Americans, right? This idea of colonization, it is what it is. It's a tale as old as time. There are winners and losers. I guess what bothers me is this idea of whitewashing history and putting it behind, trying to make it be something it's not. Like, I have much more respect for a person if they come and say, hey, I'm going to take your stuff and I'm going to do it by force. I mean, you can respect someone who's upfront about it and who at least tells you that that's what they're going to do. It doesn't make it right. But at least there's no like trying to hide it. And I'm trying to remember, I think it's this documentary. Yes, it is this documentary that I'll be sharing a clip talking about how Israel portrays this persona of being very moral and very just and very, ethical and very good to the people that they oppress. I don't see it myself, but apparently it is a thing, and I'm seeing it come up in many of these documentaries. So taking a state by force was exactly what they did, and you research and you correlate all this other information and you see what's going down. This one woman in the documentary, she was 18 or 20, I believe, at the time. She said there's no tragedy like Tantura. Again, Tantura was a town, was a village was a Palestinian village right by the water. Looks pretty beautiful. That was, this documentary focused on what happened there, right? You can fill in the blank about the atrocities and the war crimes that happened in that town. I mean, use your imagination. It was pretty rough from what they were talking about. Let's see, a Tantura resident, a boy then saw the bodies of his brother and father on a cart. Like and this also happened in was it Lebanon in the 80s? I can't remember exactly where it was, but there's just violence is violence. These things it's wild. I don't want to go into too much details here, because I am streaming to YouTube as well. And you have to be careful what you say because, we are in an age of censorship, but it's pretty horrific to watch someone talk about seeing their father and brother on a cart, their bodies of their father and brother on a cart, when the origins, like as I dive into the origins, the Rothschilds were involved, and Great Britain and the United States of America and the Balfour Declaration. And when you really see it, this is the other thing that bothers me about it. At least say what it is. Don't lie to people. It was taking that land from the Palestinian people was a strategic play benefiting the Rothschilds, Great Britain, and America. Why do you have to make it seem like, it's this benefit for the Jewish people? Most things in the world are about money, power, and control, and corporations. Smedley Butler, one of the most revered, military people in the United States in the early 1900s. Most people don't know about him. I didn't know about him, but Smedley Butler has a book called War is a Racket, and he talks about this idea. I'll be sharing a quote again on my social media at GMarkPhillips, but he talks about this idea that as he looked back on his 33-year military career, he noticed, and he basically told people, he's like, I was a paid hitman, like a paid thug, to go in these foreign countries, secure land and resources for corporations to come in and do what they will with these third world countries and ship the goods back to the United States. I mean, the United States is kind of the linchpin of it all because we buy the products from all over the world. And then, the military industrial complex, these corporations go into these countries and basically exploit them, for lack of a better word, using our military might. Again, I'm not saying it's right or wrong. I'm just saying we want to be aware of what's going on in the world, what role Americans are playing in the exploitation and or robbing of resources from these third world countries. Again, not knocking it. I'm not coming down on a side or not, but just, Smedley Butler's a fantastic guy to look up. And he talks a lot about it. He talks about how he went into all these different countries and secured these resources for these corporations. This gentleman, Teddy Katz, who was involved in the film and had all these tapes and did all this research, he and his family got death threats. You're messing with crazy things when you start talking about, Israel and the founding of it and things you don't want to be talking about. Ben-Gurion, in the documentary, they talk about him saying to make the villagers flee however you can, like use any type of tactic or terrorizing tactic to do that. The order from Ben-Gurion was drive the people out. Like, if you need to tell stories about what we did to other people, so this makes other people afraid, then do it. If you need to use force, do it. If you need to do the most crazy thing, do it. Anything to get the people off the land. And then also it was wild in this documentary Tantura. They also talked about how Hollywood got involved. This was in 1948, probably between 48 and a few years after. MGM brought a film crew over there to make a propaganda movie so they could push it to the American people. It's wild. showing the kind of, cleaning it up, the moving of the Palestinians from the land and making it look like, oh, they're willingly leaving or something like that. It was all BS. But again, Hollywood's involved in the propaganda. Even back in late 1940s, early 1950s, they were involved in it. It's wild to watch, absolutely wild to watch. And then there was this pervasive theme that Israel wants to be perceived, like I mentioned, as the most moral army in the world, as the most, ethical. And that's why, I guess, I can't remember whether it's this documentary or the other, but you don't talk about the Nakba. You don't talk about what happened in 1948. Even Seth Rogen, I ran across a crazy clip the other day of Seth Rogen on Mark Maron's podcast. I don't know how long ago it was, but he was talking about this and he didn't know it. He said, I didn't know that there were people living there on the land before it became Israel. So apparently you just don't talk about this. Let me share a couple of other things here, because they have a deep self-image, like if they want to maintain a positive image to the world. And in the Occupation of the American Mind documentary, they talked about that. There's a whole department, I think it's Hasbro, but it's all about maintaining the image of Israel. It's a PR campaign. They hired top level ad agency people, the dude who created Miller Lite less filling in the 60s, 70s. They hired that guy to come in and help them clean up their PR image around the world, because people were seeing, oh, you guys are oppressors. You guys are bad news. And they're like, we can't have this. We need to clean this up. They hired that guy, that ad guy. They also hired Frank Lutz, who is, I want to say he wrote the book Influence. That might be Robert Cialdini. Frank Lutz is very influential in managing public perception. I don't know exactly what his role is, but he does a lot with gauging public perception. They hired him to come in and help them clean up the public perception. Again, that's the Occupation of the American Mind. Fantastic documentary as well. But let me share some other stuff here from Tantura. Again, all this will be in the review series eventually when I get to it on my channel here at G. Mark Phillips. So let's see. There's a quote here we know it. We know about the truth, right? There's three things you cannot hide: the sun, the moon, and the truth. This quote that I'll be sharing and I'll be tweeting it out is here it is. But the truth has its own power. The power of truth cannot be hidden. And when it's hot, it surfaces and more people ask questions. I thought that was a fantastic line from that documentary. Fantastic. Again, talking about the film crew that went into the village of Tantura they actually reenacted the thing in a more civil way. But this guy noted, and they filmed this village after the Palestinians were driven out. They actually reenacted it. And in the film, you could see evidence of what really happened there. And that's why he got that. That's why I pulled that quote there, and I'll be tweeting it out, because you could see evidence of what really happened. Like, you cannot hide the truth for long. It will come out. Eventually it will come out. All right, that's Tantura. Now let me talk briefly, and I don't have my notes in front of me, about the Occupation of the American Mind. I know I mentioned it a little bit in this earlier, but what that one is about is, again, the propaganda campaign to keep Americans believing what Israel wants them to believe. And it is wild. I hadn't really heard anything about it at all. I didn't know much about Israel, to be honest. I didn't know much about Israel. But again, they hired high-level advertising people. They're very determined. They're a determined people to make sure that the image they have in the world is what they want it to be. Because what happened, I guess, in the 80s when they were attacking Lebanon, they actually turned from people actually saw them to be bullies, right, in the area. They saw them to be bullies because they were doing some crazy shit. And that's when they realized, oh, we have to start managing our image. I mean, everyone has to manage their image in the world. We all have a public image and we have to manage it. But I mean, Israel went hard in the paint and they had a lot of money and resources. And so they hired all these people, and basically, they put money behind it. They put time and effort behind it. They manage their image like a corporation. They manage their image like a high profile person. And it worked. And it worked. Meanwhile, behind the scenes, and same thing with America. And it doesn't excite me to talk negatively about America, but if you know what America has been doing around the world to, facilitating all sorts of atrocious things, either directly or indirectly, what we did in Iraq, almost 500,000 people died from our invasion of Iraq, and it was all based on false premises. We've been what we did under Hillary Clinton, the State Department in Libya, horrible. As I dig deeper into that, I find that Gaddafi, and I'm not giving Gaddafi a pass. I'm not saying these leaders that are running these countries are good guys or good gals, but I'm also saying the United States isn't clean. Hands aren't clean either. But what I'm finding is, Gaddafi was doing good things for the Libyan people, or maybe northern or most of Africa. I understand there were water distribution systems in place. They were trying to bring the people up. I guess on the humanitarian scale, Libya was way near the top prior to Hillary Clinton and the State Department interfering and taking him out. Trying to move away from the petrol-backed dollar. That's where these countries, that's where the shit really hits the fan. I'm pretty sure that's what happened with Saddam Hussein. Again, I bought all the lies about him. And I'm not saying some of them might not be true, but I am saying that all the things seem to hinge on anytime a country around the world tries to break away from the petrodollar, and like Gaddafi was going to do, sell their oil on the open exchange for the gold dinar, or for the dinar, which my understanding was it going to be backed by gold. That's a big no-no. And the international banking community says, okay, we've got to stop and shut that down. Meanwhile, doing that maintains the petrodollar and the finances for the banking community, but throws those regions into social and civil unrest unlike anything we've ever seen. In an interview and a video by Abby Martin recently, and I'll be sharing a clip about this too, she talks about after Gaddafi was disposed of, that area turned into a complete shit show, including open air slave trade. You got to be kidding me. And here the international community is just turning a blind eye, and most people don't know about it because they don't dig in, and it's not on the media, right? But that's what happens when you go in and meddle in these areas. I don't know exactly what happened with the Arab Spring, but I'm certain it was due to meddling, right? It's just wild to see. Where's the other one? Ukraine is another popular one, right? Back in 2014, U.S. State Department, Victoria Nuland was meddling in the affairs of Ukraine, right? And the Maidan coup. I've made a couple videos about that in the Hot Topic series. It's wild. It's wild in the world right now. And that's why I encourage people, to watch these documentaries, see what's happening in the world, and be awake and aware, because many people are not. And I'm as guilty as anyone, we're all on the path. I'm acquiring knowledge at a expedited rate because I see some crazy stuff going on in the world. It's just wild. That's what I want to share with you in this rather short, what are we coming up on, 20? I appreciate you guys hanging out with me. Couple reminders before I roll out. Again, go pick up the Great Awakening Guide if you haven't already. That's at greatawakeningguide.com. I'd love to have you as a subscriber on my YouTube and social media, anywhere at GMarkPhillips. What else do I want to tell you? I'll be talking about those documentaries in future videos, but I'm going to wrap it up. I appreciate you guys hanging out with me. Until next time, I wish you all the best, health, wealth, and success. Have an awesome day, and I will talk to you soon. Bye-bye.